we have some family members that worry about their family isolated. Can you give us some pointers on that and how you feel about that?
Yeah, that's again a real challenging one first and foremost, we always have to be careful not to project ourselves and our personal situations into what that senior situation is. Um, the Many seniors, as they age, they do sometimes pull out of society to some degree, and that sometimes is by choice, sometimes just by the situation. Um, but thinking that that's something you can change overnight and needs to change overnight can sometimes be the wrong assumption. And I always just caution people to not think that that's going to be necessarily it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's really understanding the senior, what their prior history was. Were they involved with a lot of friends and neighbors, and did they do a lot of things, or were they someone who maybe worked and had a work life, but then when it was home life, they maybe spent a lot of time at home and not doing a lot. So that type of person, when they've retired and got to an age in which they're not interacting with much, as many people at least, that can be a normal experience for them, and that's maybe what they choose to do. It may seem, and we might project our lives into that situation and think that, well, I would never want to be on my own for that many hours in the day, but that might be what that person wants. It's really it's really understanding what their desires are. Part of our assessment process is we go through and ask, what does a typical day look like for you? That's first to get understanding what today looks like. And then we ask some other questions like, are there other things that you would like to be able to do? Because what I think a lot of us are concerned with is we think that our senior loved one is not able to do the things they were able to do prior when they had good physical health maybe, and they could get in their car and go somewhere, or they could simply go out into their community easily. And that's declined over time. It's just a natural part of aging to a large degree. But do they want to get back to those things? Are there things we can do to help them? Are there devices we can use? And when I say device, I mean, are they comfortable in a wheelchair if they have to get wheeled around? Can they use a walker? What's the distance that they can travel? And these are all things we have to think about, so that as we do try to reintroduce some of those things, we don't do too much. You can't, just like today in our younger states, we can't necessarily go on a 50-mile hike without practicing getting ready for a 50-mile hike. Now, as you're in your late 70s and 80s, you have a different ability to gain strength and get to where you can do more, but you can gain strength and you can increase your activity level if you take the right kind of measured approach. And so for us, we ask those two questions. What's your current situation? What's your daily routine look like? And are there other things you want to do? And then we kind of put together a plan for how can we get back to those things we want to do? How can we achieve those, and what would it take to get there? We don't necessarily automatically say, okay, great, let's start doing those things, but we've put together a plan that takes some baby steps and helps us get there. So it's really a matter of understanding what the current situation is. What does that senior want out of things? Do they want to be more involved in some community things of that nature?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that we assume that they are the way they were when we were growing up in the house. Like as soon as we see our house that we grew up in, we just automatically assume it's the same
Yeah.
situation and they're living the same life, you
And
know?
it changes a lot. It changes a lot. I think, I try to, as I've dealing with my aging parent, I'm really reflecting a lot on my own life. And I definitely see how my life has changed. We all just have to think about it. What were you like when you were 20? What were you like when you were 30? What were you like when you were 40? And as you go through this timeline, and we all completely change our lifestyles and the way we operate. In your 20s, you're going out doing things, all kinds of stuff. You get 30, you maybe change. If you get married, that changes your lifestyle. If you have kids, that changes your lifestyle. You're I'm going through the same thing. My kids are finally leaving the house, so my lifestyle has changed, and I'm going back to going, okay, now I can do a little. I have a little more freedom, a little bit more me time, and I get to choose how I use that me time. So the same thing happens as you continue to go through those decades.